Hi everyone, it's Sean from What Up, and welcome back to another video, and happy Wheel of Time release week. Yes, Season 2 of Sony and Amazon's Wheel of Time show, episodes 1 through 3 are out right now. If you haven't already seen them, I'd go watch them. They're really good. Now, what we're going to do here in the channel is we'll release reviews, Easter egg videos, breakdowns, and answer any questions non-readers may have about the series for every single episode, and this is my Easter egg video, so if you like that sort of thing, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and of course, click that like button. What we're going to do is we're going to go through episode 1 and we're going to pick out little tidbits in the background or perhaps things that may mean something to the book fans that aren't right thrown out in your face, including a couple of little nods to the first season that weren't in the book series. Kind of neat, but we're going to go through everything in this video. This is by no means all of the Easter eggs in the first episode. I am sure I'll probably miss a couple of them, but we're going to get a good number of them, and we'll do this for each and every episode. Now, before we jump into the actual Easter eggs, I do have to give a bit of a spoiler warning because we're going to talk about a bunch of different stuff. Now, I am always going to give a full 14-book spoiler warning for all of my Easter egg videos, regardless if I talk about the first book, the second book, the sixth book. It doesn't matter because I like to talk and I may ruin something accidentally for you folks. So, spoiler warning, if you have not read the entire Wheel of Time series, that's The Eye of the World Through A Memory of Light by Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson, be forewarned, I may ruin plot points and character arcs from the book series, as well as plot points and character arcs from the entire first season of Sony and Amazon's Wheel of Time, streaming on Prime Video right now. It's episodes 1 through 8. Alright, with that out of the way, let's get on to the Easter eggs. Alright, so we're talking Easter eggs here, and I've watched the episode a couple of times now, but by no means am I going to get every single Easter egg. So if I happen to miss some, or there's some that you folks have picked up on that I don't have just yet, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll try to collect them all and like pin the comments, so to speak, at the very end in a couple of weeks time, so they're just there for anybody who really wants to see every single Easter egg in this particular episode. Now, we're going to start off, we'll probably go through the episode in chronological order, and there's a bunch of things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about actual Easter eggs, things that are put in there for the fans, things I've noticed, and things that I think are important to the story. We're not doing a full breakdown. That's for my breakdown video. We'll talk about the differences between the book and the show and explain certain things that are happening there. But this is just neat little things during the episode that I've noticed. So, first off, I want to talk about Moiraine. Now, Moiraine has lost the ability to channel at the end of episode 8 of season 1. So, it stands to reason that she wouldn't be wearing her Aes Sedai ring anymore, which she's not. In every scene in this episode, she's not wearing the ring at all. But what's also interesting is she doesn't wear blue. So she was of the Blue Aja, and one of the little Easter eggs, and I think a nod to the fact that she no longer has access to the power, is the fact that she's not wearing blue. She has hints of blue. For example, take a look in her hair. Those particular hairpins, they have blue jewels in them. But the rest of her wardrobe for the entire episode is shades of white, grays, greens, very, very, very small hints of blue in it. None of the actual blue dresses she was wearing before, none of the blue riding skirts. It's all different colors. And I think this basically has something to do with the state of her mind. She's pretty much given up on the fact that she is an Aes Sedai, that she is able to wield the one power, or will ever wield the one power again, so she's given up on that identity. She's also pretty frazzled throughout this entire episode. Her appearance is not as well put together as it is every single other time we've ever seen her on screen. That Aes Sedai calm, cool collectedness is gone, and that, I think, has in large part due to the fact that they're showcasing the fact that she has no longer have access to the power. Now, in addition to that, they do the same thing with Lan. Now, Lan has mentioned in episode 8 of season 1 that the bond is still masked. It's something that they sort of introduced in the first season, but didn't truly go into detail explaining it. Just the fact that an Aes Sedai can sort of hide from their warder or hide their feelings. It becomes incredibly important much later on, especially in the book series, and I assume much later on in the show. But if she was shielded after she masked the bond, she can't unmask the bond because she can't use the one power to do so if it's an aspect of the one power in the bond. Now, one of those things is the show is taking some liberties with things here and there. I think that's what they're doing here. So perhaps she's not actually been severed from the one power. She's just shielded like we all think, and the bond is still masked. Either way, Lan is incredibly emotional throughout this episode. Lan is normally a very stoic individual, but this is showcasing some of the things what happens with loss. So, for example, in the book series, when an Aes Sedai loses the ability to channel, it can have massive impacts on the warders, and they generally die from it. So I think we're seeing some of that here, to the extent that Lan is slowly letting this fray on him, and he's just upset with the idea that Moiraine is upset and he can't help her. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is this. This is a room in Varen Sedai's house. Now, Varen Sedai and Adelius live together in the show, and it's a little bit of a departure from the books because we did get to read about Varen Sedai's office or chambers in the White Tower, and it was super cluttered with all kinds of stuff, including a number of different owl skulls. And what we see up here on the lantern above Moraine's head is a bunch of owls. I think that's a slight nod to the fact that they talked about that in her room. The other thing is this room is incredibly cluttered. This is exactly what you would expect to see from a member of the Brown Aja who just is kind of absent-minded and likes to collect knowledge. Really nice, neat little nod to her Aja and what she would normally be doing. I think so anyway. Now, we're talking about this. So there's two things I want to discuss here. We have two different stills of this. This is Egwene in the Amyrlin's chambers in the White Tower. First thing I want to talk about is that box on the desk. This is going to seem a little strange, but I believe that's the box that all of her reports go into. It's super important much later on in the book series because all of the reports that come into the White Tower get chucked into that box, and then Egwene and anyone else really who goes into the World of Dreams can go and rifle through that box and read reports. Of course, they come and go at random, so sometimes they're super important and other times they're the number of latrines that have to be dug that day. Things of that nature. But I think that box, with especially that little, what appears to be an anchor at the front of it, is a nice nod to Swan's heritage from Tyr, and probably the box all our reports go into. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is this. This is Egwene having a slight moment with the Amyrlin's stole. So this is the rainbow striped or the many striped stole that the Amyrlin wears, and she's having just a little bit of a moment here with it, and it's just a bit of foreshadowing to much later on in the book series when Egwene actually assumes the mantle of Amyrlin herself, and I think that's why they added this in here. Super neat for us book fans to see that. I like seeing her interact with things like this because we know where she's going much later on, and her journey is just beginning right now, which is kind of neat. Now, something else I thought was really interesting, and this is just a slight nod to the book fans, is the fact that the warder yards in the White Tower are always ringed with Aes Sedai, especially Green Asha, and tons of novices and accepted. And they're all, I think, as Jordan put it, mooning over the warders. Now, you can see here, you see a few novices and an accepted here, kind of watching the warders fight down below. And 100% this is a nod to all of those scenes in the books where Jordan mentioned it, and they're all just kind of waiting and watching and hoping to bond a warder, which has happened before they become Aes Sedai, but not very often because there's big consequences to it. But again, a neat little scene here where Egwene is just walking through. This didn't have to be shown, but I thought it was kind of neat that they showed everybody watching the warders. All right, so up next isn't so much an Easter egg, it's sort of a confirmation of a theory I had. Now, in this particular scene where Lana is teaching the girls, you can see her use two types of the one power. She uses earth and she uses water. Now, earth has a very slight green tint to it, and water has a very slight blue tint to it. Very, very slight. What's interesting about this is that this scene is from Egwene and Nynaeve's perspective, and they're just learning the one power. So my idea of an unreliable narrator throughout the series, which is something Jordan used quite often in the book series, I think has a little bit of credence because of this. Because although these weaves are colored, but just very slightly, much later on in the episode rather, when Varen Sedai is fighting the Fade with Moiraine, the weaves are bright orange and red, and it's from Moraine's perspective, and she's much more experienced in using the one power. I think she can see the weaves then, see what they are. But here, the girls, not even Egwene, may not 100% have enough experience to see them brightly colored just yet. And that's why they're lightly colored. Now, I could be completely wrong. It's a theory I've had for quite some time, but I wanted to showcase this because it seems to support it just a little bit. Now, the other thing I want to talk about this scene is a nice little nod to two things. This is a nod to when Egwene was captured by Valda and the White Cloaks in Season 1, as well as when she was with the Wise Ones and the Aiel in the book series. In both instances, basically she's told, or she figures out, that using her hands to channel is a bad thing. Now, in the book series, the Wise Ones sort of make fun of the Aes Sedai for doing it, and the Aes Sedai can actually tell which sisters trained other sisters based on their hand movements, because the hand movements become a part of the weave. You have to do the hand movements, or you can't weave whatever it is you're trying to do, because if you learn it that way, it stays imprinted forever. Now, there is the ability to keep doing things a little bit different without using hand movements and whatnot in the book series, but the weave is usually in much more difficult to do and much weaker. So that's where that comes from. And the wise ones don't use hand movements in their weaves, so they kind of make fun of the Aes Sedai for it. The show kind of doubled down on this, and they basically had Egwene captured during the first season, and the White Cloaks know that the hand movements of the Aes Sedai are integral to the weaving of anything, pretty much. If they can incapacitate or remove their hands, then they have much easier time of killing the Aes Sedai. I think that was an incredibly smart move by the show to do, because it makes the White Cloaks that much more dangerous, because in the book series, they really never felt that dangerous. So a nice little nod and Easter egg to that when Egwene said she'd rather do it the hard way and not use her hands. Now, the next scene here is basically Nynaeve being Nynaeve, and I wanted to talk about it just because she's showcasing her incredibly stubborn nature. It comes up all the time in the book series, and this is a very, very good example of it. I can 100% see Nynaeve drinking dirty water rather than doing what an Aes Sedai told her to do, and I think that's a huge nod to the core of her character in the books. I really liked it either way. Now, we're going to get into Perrin and the Shienarans here. So this is Elias. Now, Elias in the book series was someone that Perrin met in the woods before he met the Tinkers, and basically set him on the path to becoming Wolf Brother, taught him a little bit about it. What I wanted to talk about here, and I have to move myself just a bit out of the way, by the magic of YouTube, I'm over here now, is that big knife on the side of Elias. That big knife is what gives him the nickname among the wolves, Longtooth. So they actually have it here on his side, and as he's moving around, you can kind of see it, which I think is incredibly neat and a nice nod to his character in the books. All right, next we're getting into something that a lot of fans had a ton of questions about, how they would show wolf speak as well as Perrin's smells. So what we're seeing here is the sending of images, I believe. I think this is how they're going to do it, and I really like it. Perrin's eyes glow yellow, and he is seeing what happened either through images being sent by Elias or perhaps just by smells, because he could smell what happened. He could smell things that were going on. And in the book series, this is a huge part of his character. He can smell all kinds of things all the time. Very hard thing to showcase on screen. Very hard thing to showcase the wolf speak on screen, because they just send images to one another, thoughts and ideas, not really words. And in this case, he's actually seeing things slowed down with kind of a fuzz around them, almost like you'd see in Teleran Rioid, or at least it talks about it in the book series. And his and Elias's eyes are both glowing yellow. Everyone else around them is frozen. No one else is moving. No one else is speaking, except for Elias and Perrin. And this is during the idea that they have that little bit of a connection, and they're kind of sharing the information of what happened. I think it's incredibly neat and a very, very smart way of showcasing wolf speak. I think it's super cool. Let me know in the comments down below what you folks think. I didn't know they would go this way with it, but I really do like it. All right, so next we have the scene with Bael Damon and Moiraine Sedai. This one, the neat little Easter egg is the fact that he mentions that he was in Whitebridge and he's being chased by people. Now, in the book series In the Eye of the World, he was the one who picked up Matt, Rand, and Tom after Shader Logoth, and he took them to Whitebridge. At that point, they get off, and he had mentioned a number of times that people were chasing him, and he thought that the Trollocs that were chasing Rand and Matt were chasing him, and they were chasing him for the treasures he had. He mentions it here, and it's a nice little Easter egg and nod to the book fans, saying that he still did that journey, he just may not have picked up Matt and Rand, and now he's going to be part of the series. I don't quite know how he's going to fit in the rest of the series, or if he's going to come back much at all, but I do like the idea that he mentioned Whitebridge and that people were chasing him, and that especially that it was two Fades that led into the battle with Moiraine, Lan, Varen, and Thomas much later on. All right, so in this scene between Perrin and Lord Ingtar, they're talking about a bunch of different things. Basically, Perrin doesn't understand why they're burying the Dark Friend, and Lord Ingtar is like, well, everyone deserves a burial. You don't know his motivations and reasons. And then they talk about Padan Fain taking the Trollocs to Winternight, how Lila, his wife, died. And Lord Ingtar, pretty tone deaf, in my opinion, says, well, maybe he had reasons. If you asked him the reasons and you knew what they were, you'd think a little bit differently. The reason I'm including this in the Easter egg section is because this is a huge nod to his character, the core of his character, and extreme foreshadowing for stuff that happens much later. in the book series near the end of the Great Hunt, and I assume in the later episodes of this season, because, and I gave full spoiler warning, so it's going to ruin some stuff for you folks. Lord Ingtar is a dark friend, and he 100% is only searching for the Horn of Valor for personal salvation, because he's in too deep and he's trying to get out, and it just doesn't work out for him. So he keeps talking about motivations and different things because he has his own motivations for everything he does, and he's sort of justifying it to himself while kind of revealing himself just a little bit. I don't think a non-book reader would have picked up on this just yet. Maybe they have, I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below. If you didn't read the books and ignored all the spoiler warnings and I just ruined it terribly for you. But I think it's a very neat nod to the core of his character. Now, we have this here, and I had to brighten up and increase the contrast in this particular photo, mainly because this fight scene was incredibly dark. But this is a huge Easter egg to the Fade's abilities. It's a nice nod to them because we didn't see it in season 1. There's a whole lot of speculation on whether or not they would have some of their abilities. In the book series, Fades can ride shadows. They can win one shadow anywhere and pop out anywhere else, and basically do that as much as they like, which is why in the Borderlands you can't cover your face, and there are lanterns everywhere to try to get rid of all the shadows at night. In this fight, the Fades were sort of teleporting back and forth around Moraine and Lan because they were riding the shadows. Very, very neat, and I don't know if it's something that everyone caught the first watch through. I did, and I think the people I watched it with that had not read the book series commented on it, but a very neat ability of the Fades, and I like the fact that they showed it. Now, we're going to end with this scene here. This is where Varen's warder Thomas gets the one power imbued into his sword, so he's a flaming sword and kills the Fade. Now, this is super neat and foreshadows a bunch of stuff, but I like the idea that the weaves are brightly colored in this, like I said earlier, and this is from Maureen's point of view, so I think she's seeing the weaves properly. But this particular image basically reminds me of Rand, and I think it reminds almost anyone who's read the book series of Rand, because he was the only one with the flaming sword for any given amount of time. Now, I guessed in one of my earlier videos that this was Thomas with Warren kind of imbuing his sword, and I was right, that's what it is, but I like the foreshadowing to what we're going to see much later on with Rand doing it, and I'm kind of hoping he does it this season. I think that would be very, very cool. Now, that's all the Easter eggs I found in the first episode. There weren't a ton of them, mainly because this was so far departed from the books and giving us so much character development. There was a lot of just sitting around and talking and getting the characters together and seeing their motivations and seeing their emotional and their physical journeys. Thought was incredibly smart to do, especially for a first episode, because now we know where the characters are at, what they're doing, what their motivations are for the entire season, and it sets everything up. Plus, there wasn't a whole lot of character development in season 1, and the Wheel of Time is essentially character development, so I thought this was a really smart episode. But I think we're going to start seeing more and more Easter eggs in the coming episodes, nodding to more and more things that are happening as we get further on in the story and more action takes place. All right, thank you so much for sticking with me here to the very end, folks. Here's to many more.